There is a particular kind of silence that falls over a hospital in the dead hours of the night. Not peace, not rest, something closer to held breath. Claire Morrow had worked the night shift at Harrow County General for 6 years, and she had learned to read that silence the way a sailor reads water, by what moved beneath it. The hospital was old, older than the county records admitted if you knew how to look. It sat at the edge of a dying rural town like something that had always been there, like something that had been waiting for the town to grow up around it. The East Wing had been sealed for 11 years, following a mold remediation that, according to Dr. Venn, had never quite finished. The windows of the sealed wing faced the courtyard. Claire's floor faced the same courtyard, and every patient who died on her floor, every single one, going back further than her tenure, further than she initially understood, had occupied the bed closest to those east-facing windows. She had started keeping a list. She told herself it was professional. She told herself she was imagining it. She was not imagining it. Ruth Calloway had been admitted on a Tuesday following a fall in her kitchen. Hairline fracture, nothing alarming, 72 hours for observation. Standard. Routine. She was given bed 4, the one closest to the window, because beds 1 through 3 were occupied and the hospital was understaffed and no one thought to move her. Claire had liked Ruth immediately. There was something clear about her, the particular sharpness of a woman who had outlived nearly everyone she loved and had decided somewhere along the way to simply tell the truth about things. On the first night, Ruth asked Claire to draw the curtains. She said the courtyard made her uncomfortable. She could not explain why. On the second night, she made the same request, but this time her voice was different, quieter, like she was trying not to attract something's attention. She told Claire that she kept seeing a man standing in the courtyard below, standing very still, looking up. Claire went to the window. The courtyard was empty. Wet pavement, a single broken bench, the dark sealed face of the East Wing. No one there. She drew the curtains. Ruth thanked her without looking away from the ceiling. Her hands, Claire noticed, had not stopped shaking. Ruth Calloway died on her 3rd night. The monitor flatlined at 2:47 in the morning. There was no medical explanation that fully satisfied. Her heart simply stopped. The attending physician on call wrote cardiac event, which was technically accurate the way that saying a house burned down is technically accurate. It tells you what happened, not what started the fire. Claire stood in the hallway afterward, clipboard in her hands, looking at the list she had been keeping. 6 patients in the last 18 months, all bed 4, or the nearest available to the east-facing window, all between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., all with the same cause of death noted on their charts: cardiac event, unexplained arrest, acute organ failure with no prior indication. And every one of them, in their final nights, had reported the same thing. A figure in the courtyard, standing still, looking up. Claire pulled the older records herself from storage during her break. She should have stopped at 18 months. She did not stop at 18 months. The pattern went back 30 years. Possibly further. The records before that were incomplete, water-damaged, pages missing in ways that felt deliberate. She sat alone in the records room at 3 a.m. with a flashlight and a growing certainty that someone in this hospital had always known. She found Pete in the corridor at 3:30, mopping the same section of floor he had been mopping for the past 40 minutes. She asked him if he had ever noticed anything strange about the East Courtyard. He looked at her with the pleasant blankness of someone who had genuinely never considered it. He said he never really looked out that way. Claire asked him why not. He paused, pulled one earbud out, thought about it with visible effort. He said, and this is what stayed with her, this is the thing she turned over and over on her drive home in the gray early morning. He said he supposed he just never felt like looking that way, like it simply never occurred to him, like the thought had been smoothed out of his mind before it could form. That night, riding the elevator to the ground floor, Claire watched the floor numbers descend and noticed, for the first time, a button below the lobby level. It was not labeled. The plastic around it was yellowed and cracked with age, but the button itself was clean, polished even, like it had been pressed recently, like it was pressed often. She did not press it that night, but she stood there in the closing elevator, staring at it as the door shut and the car began to rise, and she felt something she had not felt since she was a child standing outside a locked room. The absolute cellular certainty that something on the other side of the door already knew she was there. She found Dr. Venn the following evening before her shift began. He was in his office, which was unusual. He was rarely there after 6. And he was sitting at his desk without any papers in front of him, without his reading glasses on, just sitting, hands flat on the desktop, staring at the door as though he had been expecting her. She laid the list on his desk, all 6 names, the dates, the times, the beds. She said she thought he should see it. He looked at the list for a very long time without touching it. Then he looked up at her and said that she should request a transfer to the day shift, that she should stop keeping records, that the basement level of the hospital was sealed for reasons related to structural integrity and was absolutely not to be accessed under any circumstances. His voice was steady. His hands, flat on the desk, were not. She asked him directly how long he had known about the pattern. He said there was no pattern. She asked him what was in the basement. He said the basement was sealed. She asked him what had been there before the hospital was built, and the steadiness went out of him then, all at once, like a light switched off. He looked for just a moment like a man who had spent 40 years being very careful not to ask that exact question. He told her to go home. He said it quietly. He said it the way you tell a child to step back from the edge of something. She did not go home. The records that mattered were not in the filing room. They were in a box in the basement of the records room, which was itself a sub-level, not the sealed basement, but close enough that the air tasted wrong, heavy and cold, and faintly organic, like the inside of something old. The box was not labeled. Someone had placed it behind a water heater that had not functioned in years. She found it by following the cold. The room was 60 degrees warmer than the air near the box. She did not think about that until later. What she found inside was this. Harrow County General had been built in 1961 on land previously occupied by a sanatorium, which had itself been built in 1902 on the foundation of something older that no one had seen fit to name in writing. The land had been donated by the county. The county had acquired it following the death of its previous owner, one Silas Harrow, in 1899. Silas Harrow had reportedly refused to sell the land or leave the property for the last 20 years of his life. He had boarded up his farmhouse and stopped coming into town. Those who visited, and fewer did over those 2 decades, reported that Harrow seemed increasingly convinced that something beneath his property was alive, that it communicated with him, that it was patient, that it had been waiting in that particular spot of earth for a very long time before he arrived, and that it would be waiting long after he was gone. His body was never found. Only his boots, the reports noted, left at the top of the basement stairs. She understood the pattern now, or thought she did. The thing in the basement, whatever it was, whatever it had been before the word basement existed, before the word hospital existed, before language had words for things that waited in the earth, it needed proximity. It needed the dying to be close, not to the ground floor, not to the sub-level, but close in the way that matters to things without bodies, spiritually close, energetically close, close in whatever sense it perceived closeness. Patients near the east-facing windows were above the sealed basement's eastern chamber. The morgue, when the sanatorium had operated it, had been directly below those windows. The original farmhouse basement had been below that. And below that, The documents stopped, but Claire had done enough geometry by now. She understood the column, a vertical line of proximity running from the earth straight up through 120 years of construction, through the sealed morgue, through the sub-basement, through the floor of Ward 4, and terminating at the east-facing windows. It did not kill them, she realized with a cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Not exactly. The cardiac events, the unexplained arrests, they were side effects, consequences. It collected them, their final moments. The precise instant of passing. It gathered something from that moment, the way you might cup your hands to gather water. It had been doing this for longer than anyone could measure, and it was not full. She did not know how she knew that. She knew it the way you know a room is occupied before you open the door. The thing in the basement was not full, and it had specific taste. She found the final document at the bottom of the box. A list of names, typewritten, dating to 1962, nurses, night shift, all female, all methodical, all the kind of person who noticed patterns. Beside each name, a date. Beside each date, a single word. Opened. She pressed the button. She told herself she needed to see it. She told herself she needed evidence, documentation, something concrete and irrefutable that she could bring to someone with authority. She told herself many things in the elevator as it descended past the lobby, past the sub-level, past any floor that appeared on any map of the hospital she had ever seen. The descent took longer than it should have. The fluorescent light in the elevator flickered once, and then produced a light that was subtly wrong, still white but cold in a way that made her skin look like something drained. The doors opened onto a corridor that smelled of formaldehyde, and something beneath formaldehyde that she had no name for. The corridor was dark except for a bioluminescent quality in the air itself. A faint cold light that came from nowhere and illuminated nothing clearly. She could see the corridor extended maybe 30 feet before ending in a heavy door. An old door, iron-framed, the wood black with age and moisture. Along the walls of the corridor on either side were doors. She counted 7, each one sealed with a padlock that was bright and new and utterly out of place, the way the elevator button had been clean amid the filth. She walked to the end. She stood before the iron-framed door, and she understood with her hand on the handle that the door was not locked, that it had never needed to be locked, that you could only find this door if you were meant to find it, that she had been meant to find it, that something on the other side had spent. She thought of the list, the dates going back. Decades, arranging the conditions that would bring precisely her to precisely this door at precisely this moment. Her hand turned the handle. The door swung inward, and she saw. She was found by Pete at 5:47 a.m., sitting on the floor of the lobby, her back against the elevator doors. She was conscious. She was physically unharmed. She gave a full statement to the 2 county officers who responded to Pete's call, and what she told them was this. She had been doing inventory in the sub-level records room and had tripped and briefly lost consciousness and was disoriented for some time before making her way back to the lobby. She told them the basement was sealed, structural concerns, she had not been near it. She told them she was fine. She sounded fine. She looked fine if you did not notice that her hands had stopped moving entirely, not fidgeting, not resting, simply still in a way that human hands are not normally still, if you did not notice that she had not blinked in the time it took to give the statement, if you did not notice that she had come upstairs without her flashlight, without the box of documents, without her clipboard, without any of the things she had carried down. The officers filed a wellness report. Dr. Venn called in early, looked at her for a very long time across the lobby, and then looked away and said she was fine. He said it the way he had said everything for 40 years, looking somewhere else. The sealed door to the east wing, 2 nurses reported later, was standing open for the first time in 11 years. It was sealed again by noon, and no explanation was given for how it had been opened. There was no record of who closed it. 3 weeks later, Claire Morrow returned to the night shift. She had taken a brief leave, documented as stress-related, and returned without incident. Her colleagues noted that she seemed rested, calmer than before, if anything. The dark circles had faded. She smiled more than she used to. She was efficient, thorough, warm with patience. She was, by all observable measures, fine. She requested on her first night back that bed 4 be kept available. She told the charge nurse it was a comfort measure. Some patients, she explained, found the east-facing window soothing. Something about the view of the courtyard. She began keeping a new list, different from the old one. This one had only one column, names. Not the names of patients who had died. Not yet. The names of nurses, night shift, the methodical ones, the ones who noticed things. She was 3 names in when Pete, passing by the nurse's station at 2 a.m., glanced over and asked what she was writing. She covered it with her hand and smiled and told him it was nothing. He nodded and moved on. She watched him go. Then she turned back to her list, and in the courtyard below, something that had been standing in the dark shifted its weight and looked up at the window where she sat, and something passed between them, a recognition, a confirmation. And the thing in the courtyard went still again, and the hospital breathed around them both, and the night continued, and the list grew, and nothing was wrong. Nothing at all.